The message played once. Then again. My sister's laugh filled my car. She said I'd cover the bills anyway. She always does. I pulled over by the curb. Traffic hissed past. My phone vibrated with her name, then went quiet. No one called to explain. I sat there, hands cold, engine idling. I didn't reply. I saved the audio. At dinner that night, they talked about due dates and plans. I smiled. I paid nothing. When the calendar turned, I watched the house go dark and understood who I had been to them. It finally felt accurate. And strangely calm. The ask came the way it always did, dressed up as concern. Mom called on a Tuesday afternoon while I was folding laundry. She said the power company had sent another notice. She said winter rates were higher than expected. She said my sister was overwhelmed and embarrassed. She said she hated to ask me. Then she asked me. I said I could look at it. That was my mistake. I opened the email she forwarded. Past due balance. Late fees. A payment plan already broken once. The numbers were not small. I told Mom I could cover part of it, but not all. I suggested they call the utility and set something formal. She said my sister had already tried. She said it would be faster if I handled it. She said the kids needed heat. That sentence always worked. I sent the payment that evening. I didn't announce it. I didn't ask for thanks. I put the confirmation in a folder labeled Family, the way I always did. A few days later, another notice came. Water this time. I asked why there were two. Mom said things piled up. She said my sister's hours had been cut. She said it was temporary. I paid again. At Sunday dinner, nobody mentioned it. My sister talked about a trip she wanted to take in the spring. She scrolled photos on her phone. Dad asked if anyone wanted dessert. I waited for a look, a nod, something. Nothing came. When I left, Mom hugged me and said drive safe. It wasn't new. Years earlier, I covered a car repair because my sister needed it for work. I paid a phone bill so the kids could call school. I floated groceries when rent ran short. Each time, it was framed as a bridge. Just this once. Just until next month. The bridge never ended. It just became the road I was expected to maintain. I tried to slow it down. I asked questions. I suggested budgets. I offered to sit down and plan. That's when the tone changed. Mom said I was making things uncomfortable. Dad said money shouldn't come between family. My sister said she didn't want to feel judged. The message was clear. Help quietly or don't help at all. I chose quiet. The voice note arrived on a Friday. I was parked outside the grocery store, list in hand. It was short. Casual. Meant for Mom. My sister laughed and said I'd cover it anyway. She always does. I felt the sentence land in my chest, heavy and exact. There was no malice in her voice. Just certainty. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't reply. I saved the file and locked my phone. Inside the store, I moved slowly. I noticed prices. I noticed how often I reached for generic brands without thinking. At home, I listened to the message again. Then I filed it where I kept confirmations. Not as leverage. As proof. That night, Mom called to ask if I'd seen the notice about the next due date. I said yes. She started to explain. I let her talk. When she paused, I said I couldn't help this time. My voice didn't shake. I didn't explain why. I said I had plans. She said she understood, but her silence told a different story. I went to bed early. I slept. In the morning, I made coffee and paid my own bills. I didn't feel angry. I felt precise. For the first time, the picture matched the story. I had been the solution, not the sister. The safety net, not the family. Knowing that didn't hurt the way I expected. It steadied me. I stopped anticipating their emergencies. I started watching the calendar instead. Quietly. Carefully. Waiting to see what would happen when I did nothing at all. Once I stopped stepping in, the past lined up clearly. Little moments I'd brushed off sharpened. The time my sister bought a new phone while I paid the old bill. The month she posted dinner photos while I covered groceries. The holiday where she said she'd pay me back after her bonus, then booked a weekend away instead. None of it had felt cruel on its own. Together, it formed a system that worked because I stayed quiet. I watched how quickly responsibility shifted when I didn't answer right away. Mom left longer voicemails. Dad texted reminders framed as concern. My sister sent memes, then questions, then nothing. When I did respond, it was brief. I wasn't busy. I just didn't move. The urgency stayed with them this time. I still showed up to family things. I brought a side dish. I sat where there was space. I listened. When money came up, conversations slowed. People checked their phones. Someone changed the subject. I noticed how relief spread when I didn't offer. It meant the expectation had been real all along. They'd planned around me without telling me. Social media made it clearer. Posts about gratitude. Comments about resilience. Photos under warm lights. No mention of who paid to keep them on. When I asked Mom if the power company had called back, she said they were working on it. She didn't ask if I could help. That was new. The silence felt like an adjustment, not an apology. I began to document again, not for revenge. For clarity. Dates of notices. Amounts. Calls unanswered. I learned how utility timelines worked. How many days past due before shutoff? What warnings looked like? I didn't interfere. I let the system do what systems do when no one props them up. The due date arrived on a Wednesday. I went to work. I cooked dinner. I put my phone face down. When I checked later, there were missed calls. No messages explaining. Just panic in the timing. I didn't return them. Not that night. The next morning, a neighbor texted me by mistake. She said the house was dark. She asked if everything was okay. I said I wasn't sure. I felt nothing dramatic. No rush. No guilt. Just confirmation. The system had finally met the story they'd been telling themselves. And for the first time, it didn't include me. They called that afternoon, once the reality settled in. Not to ask how I was. To ask what I was going to do. Mom left a voicemail first. She said there must have been a mistake. She said the kids were cold. She said my sister was crying. She said the utility company wouldn't budge. Her voice carried urgency, not apology. At the end, she said, "Please call me." Dad texted next. Short sentences. He said this was serious. He said family doesn't let things go this far. He said we could sort it out if I stepped in quickly. The assumption sat there, unchallenged. That I would fix it. That I always had. My sister finally called. Her voice was tight. She asked if I'd paid yet. She didn't ask why I hadn't. She asked when. I let the line stay quiet long enough for her to notice. She filled it by saying she'd had a lot going on. She said she thought I understood. She said this wasn't fair. I said I wasn't covering it. She asked what that meant. I told her exactly what it meant. I wasn't paying. No explanations. No lecture. Just the boundary, spoken once. She said I was punishing the kids. She said Mom would never forgive me. She said I was being petty over a joke. I didn't argue with the word joke. I didn't mention the recording. I didn't explain how it landed. I repeated myself. I'm not paying. The reactions came fast after that. Accusations wrapped in concern. Stories about how hard things had been. Promises that this time would be different. Dad called again and said we needed to talk in person. I said I wasn't available. He said he didn't recognize me anymore. I said okay. What surprised me was how quickly the focus shifted away from me once it was clear I wouldn't move. Calls slowed. Messages shortened. The panic didn't turn into care. It turned into logistics. They started calling other people. They asked neighbors for space heaters. They posted about power outages like it was weather, not consequence. I went to the office the next day. Fluorescent lights. Break room coffee. Normal problems. I felt steady. The boundary held without effort. No one crossed it because no one believed it could be crossed anymore. That was the breaking point. Not the shutoff. Not the calls. The moment I realized their urgency ended where my usefulness did. And that I was finally allowed to step out of the role without asking permission. After that week, things settled into a new shape. Not better. Just different. Days passed without messages. Then longer gaps. The power came back on eventually. I heard it through someone else, like most things now. A payment plan. Late fees rolled in. Someone loaned them a space heater. Someone else fronted part of the deposit. The system did what systems do when responsibility is finally shared. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't quick. But it worked without me. No one circled back to apologize. No one asked how I felt hearing that message. The voice note never came up again, not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't fit the version of events they needed. Silence became the agreement. I accepted it. Months later, I ran into my sister at a school pickup line. She waved like nothing had happened. She asked how I was. I said fine. She mentioned the kids, the weather, a sale at the grocery store. She didn't mention bills. She didn't mention laughter recorded by accident. We stood there until cars moved forward. Then she drove off. That was it. My life grew smaller in the right ways. Fewer emergencies. Fewer calls that started with, "Can you?" My money stayed in my account. My evenings stayed quiet. I stopped bracing for other people's due dates. I stopped feeling responsible for keeping lights on in houses I didn't live in. I didn't tell anyone my side. I didn't play the audio for proof. I didn't need to. The point was never to expose them. It was to stop exposing myself. Letting the lights go out wasn't revenge. It was accuracy. I had believed a story about who I was to them. The recording corrected it. Sometimes I think about that laugh. Not with anger. With clarity. It was casual because my role had been casual to them. Reliable. Predictable. Unquestioned. Stepping away didn't make me cruel. It made me honest. I still help people. Just not blindly. Just not silently. Help now comes with consent and limits. It comes with space to say no without consequences I have to manage alone. I don't regret waiting for the due date. I regret the years before it, when I paid out of habit instead of choice. The night their house went dark wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. And in that quiet, something finally shut off in me too. Not my generosity. My obligation. And that has stayed off ever since.